Welcome to the Urban Shalom webinar. My name's Andre Van Emeren, and I've got Chris Elisara with me and Brian McCabe. I serve as the International Coordinator for the Urban Shalom Society. Chris works in communications and programming with us, and Brian's one of our sector leaders in Youth in the City. It's great to have you joining us. We want to talk with you today about what the Urban Shalom Society is, our vision, what we've been doing, and where we're headed for the next few years. We believe there's some very exciting work happening in cities, and we want to share that with you. Something that has set a tone for the work that we're involved in was a quote by Desmond Tutu. There comes a point where we need to stop just pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. And we know there are plenty of people falling into the river in our cities, struggling with all kinds of issues. Things like poverty, isolation, unemployment, homelessness, mental health issues, addictions of all sorts, climate change related issues, and the list could go on and on. We also know there are lots of positive possibilities in cities, and we mustn't forget that in the midst of all the issues and the troubles. It's easy to see what's not working, but there are so many things that are working. And in a city, there's a chance for people to come together. There's a critical mass for positive change. To make a difference. And we've seen that with many of the peaceful protests that have taken place in cities over the years. We have an opportunity to be a part of things called people-centered design, where we actually design cities for people to live in, rather than for architects to feel good about themselves. Vibrancy, life, energy. And I don't mean that disparagingly, but there's been a way of doing architecture in the past which hasn't always taken people into account. And we have this opportunity. And many architects and designers are now working in a very positive way. We have an opportunity, though, in cities for vibrancy, life, energy. We have a chance to contribute to the life of the city in a sense of community. We have access to a great deal of infrastructure, to community groups, to arts, to culture, to sports. And of course, there are communities of faith right throughout any city. The Urban Shalom Society wants to help the Christian community engage with the challenges and opportunities of the urban environment, creating pathways towards a greater expression of shalom in global cities. We're working on this through creating a movement of scholars, practitioners and leaders committed to working upstream on the broad range of concerns present in the urban environment. We'll work to engage with both the New Urban Agenda and our call to action, which we'll talk to you about, to influence policy and grassroots engagement towards the creation of shalom in global cities. And our mission is twofold, to work at both the grassroots and policy level to influence change towards that beautiful picture of shalom. Now, shalom's a word that's not used everywhere. It's one that perhaps isn't so common. And so it's useful to ask the question, what do we mean by shalom and why use this word? For us, shalom and the kingdom of God are interchangeable. I often ask the question of my students and people that are doing workshops with me is, what would our communities or cities look like if there was a greater expression of the kingdom of God? This is a missional question that can inspire our imagination to work with God on his vision for the city. It's a wonderful picture of beauty, of harmony, of rest, of purpose, of prosperity or flourishing. So I'm going to invite Chris to go into some more detail about the work that we've been doing since October 2016, and we'll take it from there.
Hi, Andre. It's and Brian. It's great to be here and to share with you what we've been doing and kind of how we came together and, what the roadmap is going forward for the next couple of years. But we'll talk about this in a little bit, but one of the key things that brought us together was the MICA Global Triennial 3 years ago in Quito, Ecuador. No, sorry, that was something else. Okay, Quito, Ecuador a little bit, but in Peru was the MICA Triennial. And there's going to be another MICA Triennial coming up in the Philippines. There's going to be also another key moment for the Urban Shalom Society. But going back to that first one, we met there And I was coming from the work from the World Evangelical Alliance, which I still do. I direct the Creation Care Task Force for the World Evangelical Alliance, and I understand that the way that cities are put together really influence how people can care for the creation just by the way they live. And so I was really focused on making cities sustainable from a creation care perspective, which also means that they're livable for people. A flourishing place, a sustainable place for people. That's good for the creation. So I went to the Micah Triennial to share that. And also knowing that every 20 years, the world community comes together to talk about the future of cities and to put together a roadmap for urban development for the next 20 years. And that meeting that happens every 20 years is called Habitat. Habitat 1 was 60 years ago. Habitat 2 was 40 years ago. And then this year, we had Habitat 3. I might have got my math mixed up, but anyway, they were every 20 years. So Habitat 3 was a meeting that I wanted to convene Christians to go to talk and contribute to the discussion about cities. And so I went to Micah Triennial with those two things, to talk about cities and to get our community of evangelicals to going to Habitat 3. And a band of us got together and we went to Habitat 3 in Quito, Ecuador. That's where that comes in. And we had a summit there. And we talked about how faith, Christian faith, impacts the city from a biblical perspective. And out of that conversation was developed what's called the gospel and the future of cities, a call to action. So it's a call to action for Christians to engage the city from an urban shalom perspective that Andre talked about. So that statement we worked on over 2017, and we went to another global meeting called the World Urban Forum in Kuala Lumpur this year, and we released that statement, the gospel and the future of cities. And organizations have read it, digested it, and they're supporting the call to action of cities that is outlined in that. So that's one of the things that we've done, which we want to draw your attention to. It kind of provides basically a framework for the way that we work, the things that motivate us and guide us, and what we're bringing people in the Urban Shalom Society together to work on in these different ways. Another really important event that we hosted that came out of our time in Quito was because we turned up as a Christian community. We knew that we wanted to keep meeting, and UN Habitat, which hosts these urban Habitat 3s, they have these habitats. They have what's called these urban shalom. They have what's called these urban thinkers campuses for different sectors working on city stuff. And we put our hand up and said, hey, we want to have an urban thinkers campus for us, for people of faith. And the UN Habitat said, go ahead and do that. And so we did that. So we hosted for the very first time 2 events. One was a UN Habitat urban thinkers campus, and we also did, leading up to that, a Christian conversation, because the UN Habitat urban thinkers campus is a multi-faith conversation, but we needed to have a Christian conversation to lead into that, and so we did these two. We hosted these 2 things, and that continued to build on the work that we did in Quito. And there was different sectors around the urban questions and issues that we work with that came together to talk at those forums. So the different sectors that we've kind of broken out to really deep dive into are, the theology of the city, and also, the missional aspects of the city that come through Scripture. Another sector is poverty and urban poverty and equity. Another sector is urban design, as Andres mentioned. Community development is another sector. Health in the city is another sector. The whole smart city movement, and how data can influence what happens in cities for better or for worse. And so we wanted a whole group of people talking about that and working on that. Arts and culture in cities. It's one of the attractions of people living in cities. So that was another sector that was very important. Youth leadership. Brian headed that sector and he called together a global community of youth leaders that came to our Urban Shalom Forum and the Urban Thinkers Campus. Education. We're going to, engage cities. We need a really strong education sector where we're thinking about cities, and we're training folks to understand cities in significant types of ways so that we can do work in the city. And obviously the creation care aspect was another sector, and then governance. So these are all the different sectors that we're kind of working through as an Urban Shalom Society, with different leaders working in these different sectors to advance them. And you put those sectors together and you get a holistic work that comes together, linked together, that helps build us working in the city, sharing the gospel in all of its richness and depth. So one of the ways that we work, and we invite folks to come to the Urban Shalom Society and the work that we do in the future, is to bring your expertise and jump into these sectors and start to work with us to advance those. And we'll talk about opportunities for you to do that in a little bit. So to date, we've done these significant events. And then, as I mentioned, we've been doing these Urban Shalom Forums, and Andre has been leading a lot of that work. So I'm just going to turn it back to him to talk about that work that we're doing. And then we'll come back and talk about, the work that we've done for next years as we lay out, what we feel we're called to be doing. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Andre.
Thanks, Chris. So we've been involved in, I think it's around 9 Urban Shalom Forums in different parts of the world: Sydney and Melbourne, Birmingham, Cincinnati and Detroit, Thailand, Bangkok, in Malaysia, in KL. And they've been wonderful opportunities to different sizes, different numbers of people there, but always great quality conversations around this holistic look at the city. One of the issues that we see in cities time and time again is silos. People just working in their area of expertise. And while we need that, and we need people to understand the intricacies of different environments, we also need that cross-sector conversation that looks at the whole system. Looks at the whole wide approach to cities and how these sectors interact with each other. And so it becomes, as Chris was saying, quite a holistic look. And that's what these forums have been about, as we've gathered together with different leaders and practitioners, academics, excuse me. We've been so grateful to God for the people that have come around this conversation, you included. And there's this wonderful opportunity now to point forward to the future not just to look at the past of what's been happening in cities, but actually to be a part of designing and working with others around the future. And I've got the privilege to do a little bit of that work with significant Christian leaders in Africa. And we're working in Zambia at the moment, and also in Cameroon. And there's wonderful, wonderful people who just want to see their communities move forward. And so we do resourcing, teaching and training around this picture of shalom, and also around community development and other processes that can be used to see the realization of shalom in cities, and to recognize that it's something that everyone in a city can be a part of. And that's why it's been so key for us to begin working with people of other faiths to join together, and people of no faith, as we come together around this question of what it looks like to create shalom or flourishing in cities. And it's a very exciting opportunity that we have now to really ramp this work up, and to see it through faith communities and others in cities become something very significant. There's always the opportunity to speak to local councils, local government, policymakers, and one of the things we're passionate about at the Urban Shalom Society is helping you know how to do that. And how to speak the language. And that's why it's been so important for us to be involved in things like Habitat 3 and the World Urban Forum in Malaysia earlier this year, because it puts us not in the front of the conversations, but it puts us at the table. And that means that we have an opportunity to partner, to bring what we have as faith communities into this question of flourishing cities. So the future, Chris, what's it looking like for us?
There's I think an amazing future for the work of the Urban Shalom Society. And, part of that is, if you go to our website, one of the other things that we accomplish is, the website is becoming a place for resources for folks who are concerned about the city. That's where you can find information about the Urban Shalom forums around the world and the other urban events that are happening. And we also have there a journal. So we actually have a really good written resource for urban practitioners. And we have a couple of issues that are there since 2016, and we're looking forward to doing the next issue, for example, on refugees and how refugees impact the city. And so the new urban journal, Andre, what's the name of the journal?
New Urban World Journal.
New Urban World Journal is another resource. And so if you're writing about urban issues, you can get involved in that. And Andre would love to have you
absolutely
connect, absolutely, and write for the journal. But coming up, there's some other events that we want to invite you to as leaders that we can convene and work together. The first one that's coming up is the MICA Triennial in September. And, as I mentioned before, that was the key point for convening and starting the Urban Shalom Society. And so we're going to be meeting again. And it's 3 years since we were there. And when leaders get together and we're working, we can get a bump in our work. And so we're doing a whole series of seminars, plenaries at the MICA Triennial in September. There's also at a summit. We're having another summit connected to the MICA Triennial. So that'll be a 3-day event of intensive leadership work. So that summit, and Andre can talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. That's something you should be aware of. Now, coming out of this year, we're going to hold another international UN Habitat event an Urban Thinkers Campus for faith-based organizations and groups. So that'll come together in 2019. And that will lead into another very significant event, which is the World Urban Forums happen every couple of years. We mentioned this year we went to the one in Malaysia, and we presented and released the Gospel in the Future Cities at the World Urban Forum this year. But in 2 years' time, in 2020, will be another World Urban Forum. So we're going to go there and bring more people to the World Urban Forum. It's going to be in Abu Dhabi in 2020. The actual dates haven't been released yet, but our plan is to get to 2020 with as many people as we can to be involved in the conversation, share what we have, what we know, what our experiences are, and learn from others. So again, as Andre said, to be at the table at this global forum, sharing what we know about cities. So the roadmap is this. This year, we're going to do the Micah Triennial, have a summit. Next year, we're going to do an Urban Shalom Forum and a UN Habitat Urban Thinkers Campus, all leading to going to World Urban Forum 2020. So that's a roadmap going forward. So as we strengthen the Urban Shalom Society in these different sectors over the next couple of years, we're really excited to go to Abu Dhabi and to participate fully as a Christian community with the rest of the world focused on cities, and we'll be able to share our unique perspective as Christians and the gospel and shalom. And that's totally exciting to us.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. So just focusing in on the Urban Shalom Summit that's happening in Manila. So as Chris was saying, the triennial's from the 10th to the 14th, and then we pick up in the afternoon of the 14th and go through to the 16th of September. So you can come for both or come just for the summit. It's totally up to you, but please know that there's a warm invitation extended to you to be a part of this. All the details are on our website, www.urbanshalomsociety.org. So please go and check those out. And we're going to have, I think there's about 10 sectors that we're going to have represented, as Chris was outlining before, everything from urban planning to community development, youth in the city, arts and culture, and a whole range of other things. So you get to pick one of those sectors to go deep in and to be a part of that conversation. And we really welcome you to do that. And coming out of that summit, it's not just a talk fest. We want those groups to have an enduring life where they develop resources and perhaps even some projects on the ground. So we just see where each group wants to go. But we're very keen to be a part of catalysing change, catalysing positive transformation in our cities. And we believe faith communities have a vital role to play because we're there, aren't we? We're in faith, we're in cities, and we've been there for a long, long time. And so we do actually have an understanding of cities, and we need to hone that understanding, to grow it, to understand the language that's being used by sector development, and to be able to move forward and make our contribution. And so the summit will be an opportunity to come together to do that and to find out more about how the resources that we're developing can serve you in the work that you're doing in local cities. One of the examples I would like to bring Brian into the conversation, one of the examples of the sectors is the youth in the city. And Brian, your sector was probably one of the strongest that we had in Singapore back at the Urban Shalom forum that we had there, as well as the Urban Thinkers Campus. So Brian, do you want to just talk a little bit about how your sector group worked?
Yeah, so I'm a pastor in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I also lead a youth mentoring program. I've studied youth development for many years, but was looking for a global outlet to be able to kind of bring some of the best ideas to the table about what's working and with regard to impacting young people around the world. So I got involved pretty early on with the work of the Urban Shalom Society. And at the Urban Shalom Forum and the Urban Thinkers Campus, it actually provided a platform for our sector to come together, to exchange best ideas, first with Christian leaders at the Urban Shalom Forum, but then moving into the time at the United Nations sponsored event to work with at the Urban Thinkers Campus level with people from other faiths and people who were interested in helping the tide of cities to rise. The majority of the people on this planet are young people. So to be able to kind of bring together leaders that are working on the front lines, with many of them with their heads down, but for them to be able to take some time to come together and again, bring their best ideas. What's working? What's not working? Cities are complex and we can respond in really creative ways so that young people can thrive in our cities. So what our group did before our sector actually met, we pulled together with some Skype sessions. We had 4 or 5 of them actually. We had leaders from India, Africa, United States, South America, all over the place would kind of contact our group, and we would have these preparation times. And then when we got into the Urban Shalom Forum, we hit the ground running. And boy, what a creative group of people, of men and women, were gathered there. And we kind of mapped everything out, what our goals were for the few days that we had together. And then we were actually, since then, we've touched base several times. A lot of us now have a network of people. We're implementing some of these best practices in the work that we're doing and helping to spread the word through things like writing articles in the New Urban World Journal. We released that book through Urban Shalom Publishing last year that had some insight on how to work with youth in cities. And so just a lot of momentum is being gained. It was so encouraging for the group to come together in a sector like that, to step away from their work just for a few days, to be able to kind of come above the clouds a little bit and to be able to think and process and reflect and learn from each other. And then, of course, all of us who are working downstream with young people, we are looking for, why are kids falling into that stream in the first place where they're coming downstream? So this is a great opportunity to do some advocacy work, some policy work that really does have meaning, again, with the United Nations and with the organizations that we're partnered with. The Urban Shalom Society is a very collaborative network, so it brings together institutions and organizations and leaders that are doing some awesome work. So that's what we'll be doing. I'll be helping to lead the youth sector again in Manila. I'll be there, and I'll be arriving with some leaders working with the youth sector, and looking forward to seeing what the Lord does there during that time.
Fantastic. Thanks, Brian. Chris, I don't know if you've got any more to add. We may sort of draw this to a close. But I just wanted to say I think there's some really amazing opportunities, and would encourage others to, just look at the website and to consider coming to the summit in Manila. And whilst we don't have, money that we can use to sponsor people, please come and have a chat to us if money is an issue, and we can talk about that. Chris, have you got any final thoughts? Chris is all good. So thank you so much for taking the time to have a listen to us. And we hope to see you in Manila, or at least connecting in some way. God bless you as you move forward to work for the flourishing, for the shalom of cities.